So that's at least nice. We are recorded. I see that Ozan is here.
Hello, Hank. How are you?
Hi. Can you reach somehow Massimo Alloli? I think he's still in the other room,
right?
Yeah. To be honest, I don't have a phone number of him, and he was in the chat.
Very good. What about Mr. Deska?
Mr. Deska, he cannot join, but it's Jerry Muscat who has replaced him.
Got it.
There's Massimo. There's Massimo. Okay, perfect. Hello, Massimo. Okay, let's start our meeting. And we do that by showing this.
I want Europe to become the first climate neutral continent in the world by 2050.
The future calls for a new energy. An energy that will develop a productive, healthy, inclusive and sustainable Europe. The future calls for people who believe in this energy, to share their knowledge and experience in overcoming urban and rural challenges, to improve the performance of Europe and create better places for people to live in. The future calls for experts and leaders to work together across borders, to enable integrated thinking to cope with complex challenges. The future calls for new approaches that accelerate urgent transitions in all European regions and areas. The future calls for stronger focus on the potential of regions and areas to improve the lives of all Europeans. We are METREX, the network for European metropolitan regions and areas. Only together, we can make an inclusive, competitive future a reality. Join the METREX network.
And there we are. Welcome, everybody. Very happy to be here. My name is Henk Bouwman. I'm Secretary General of METREX, the network of European metropolitan regions and areas. You see a brief introduction to our network, and we are very pleased and happy, of course, to be here at the 4th Urban Economy Forum, for which we are a partner, and we're very looking forward to also this session, but we also enjoyed many of the other sessions already. So great to be here. We are a network of metropolitan regions and areas, as said. METREX stands for Metropolitan Exchange, and just mentioned in the brief, it is founded in 1996 at its first conference in Glasgow. So the Councillor of Glasgow, of course, is from our, let's say, one of our founding cities, which is great. We are a network that is run and governed by members. We are growing. At the moment, we are over 50 members. We just welcomed Bucharest and Cavado Braga, the city of Braga in northern Portugal. So it is really fantastic to be here and to have also, let's say, presence from regions and metropolitan cities from all over Europe. I would like to give the word to Jakub Mazur, our METREX president, but not after I've showed you this. These are the people who will be speaking here at this session. So Jakub Mazur, he's our president and deputy mayor of the city of Wrocław in Poland. Massimo Alloli, he's a researcher at the ANCI, the Italian Association for Local Communities. Sandeep Shingadia from the West Midlands Combined Authority and Transport for West Midlands. And Jerry Muscat from the European Investment Bank. And we will leave some time for questions, answers, and of course the conclusions. So please, Jakub, the floor is yours. I will stop sharing this, and you should be able to share your presentation online.
Okay, thank you very much, Hank. It is always good to be among friends and among people who understand something more, or maybe it isn't the perfect sentence. I would say rather about people who care about the future, and we are about to discuss some maybe European perspective, but also according to presentation that we had opportunity to see yesterday and today, we understand that we are in a very similar position whenever we are coming from. It is in Asia, in America, but basically in Europe, from perspective of metropolitan regions and 125 Europeans that we are representing, we try to share with you some perspective of time, perspective of present time, because we all know that it is more than demanding, and dynamic of changes surprises us every day, not only as experts, but also, mostly as inhabitants. And from perspective of my being deputy mayor, also as those who are in first line responsible for wellness and well-being of inhabitants, as authorities and mayors of the cities. For now, and especially for present moment, it is certain for many people who are gathered close to METREX that we have to forget about traditional methods we used to use. It is time to forget about this mental set that we had, mindset that we had about solutions that we can provide, implement, we can create and come up with some long-term ideas. Mostly our job, especially now, it is about reaction of present situation. And because of this, we are trying to predict or maybe to create some strategies for next decades. It is very tough because we all know that because of energy crisis, because of wars, because of disasters, because of unpredictable moments in every month happening in our cities or regions, we cannot be able or prepare to risk this reduction in 100%. So our job, and as experts, as people gathered around this issue, how to create the future resilience, is how to share this knowledge and become successful in this process. And from METREX, as it is representing Scandinavian countries, but also the South cities, from Lisbon to Polish, from Helsinki to Athens. So we are very proud that sharing this perspective make us prepared to react in many cases, also with what is the topic of our discussion. So sustainable financing of our development. And in this case, we will try to share with you some examples that are coming from our regions and cities, just to show how it look like nowadays and how it might look like from perspective, let's say, of European Investment Bank, from perspective of England, Poland, and also all the European approach. It is our pleasure to share with you and to be present at this wonderful forum, because it means a lot for us to share this knowledge and to gain this knowledge from you. So let's start. I don't know, Hank, if I should start with my presentation of because the order was at the beginning. Hank,
you can share. We start with you, and then Massimo Aluli.
okay.
And it's
So
coming.
you know, is it?
There it is.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect, perfectly. So let me start with some assumption. Okay, we used to be very stable in Europe, let's say, in our development, in our success story. We achieved this center point that we are thinking about our tactics and strategies, about successful stories and successful paths. From perspective of Wrocław, because I want to show you the mid-sized city in the Central Europe, that it seems to be very successful in story, especially during last 30 years. Because of hard work, we managed to become very good place to be educated, to have job positions and career development, to also come here from any place in the world and become a family member of Wrocław, because we have 130 nationalities living in very secure, safe, rapidly growing environment, full of culture, full of sport events, full of career opportunities. It's never been better in our 1,000 years history. But let me share with you just a couple of previous stories. So as you see, it is just point number 3. 3 weeks, let's say 3 weeks ago, we just entered the prices of energy. So the prices that we are in charge of to supply communal services are increasing.
Jacob,
yes?
you want to show another slide, or? Because
yeah,
I still see
can you see?
I still see the opening slide only.
Really? How I see the and now it's not moving, unfortunately.
It's not moving, but maybe you can click on the, what is it?
Yeah.
The lower button, not that one, but the one next to that. The one next to it.
Can you see?
No. Hey. What's this?
Can you see it?
It doesn't move. Shall I? You send it to me as well.
I'm sorry to hear that. It's always like this, you know. We are prepared for, but can you see this?
Yes.
Can you see these 3 points at your screen with energy, poison river, and the refugees?
No.
No,
we see only the title slide.
Maybe you could reshare.
Wow, I don't know how to make it happen.
Yeah, maybe you just stop and do it again. And otherwise...
there it is.
Yep.
Yeah, it's better.
Now
okay.
It's coming. Yeah,
so,
that's good. Perfect.
So you see, it just only 2020, as I said, 30 years of our modern history brought us to a very successful city, very successful capital of region, so metropolitan region, as we consider this. And I'd like to speak from that perspective, because whatever happens in Wrocław is a result of our metropolitan point of view and also reaction of neighboring municipalities. But only this month, this year, we see 3 weeks ago, it was 6 times more expensive. So it is counted in millions that we don't have. 2 months ago, because of climate change, we experienced main river poisoning, and it was tons of dead fishes appear in our river banks. But most important was the point number 1, 250 only 1,000 refugees from Ukraine only in my city. In whole agglomeration area, it was over 300. And at the same time, we also have climate changes, some issues that we try to implement as a result of our tactics and strategies from previous moments. So work never stopped, and at the same time, you see, just 7 months of this, we couldn't predict this momentum, and we are facing this. So it means a lot of challenges, a lot of possible investment that we have to gain money for, and we have to prepare our budgeting according to public finance discipline. That is very hard in terms, and maybe according to law, and in terms of our preserving job positions, because whenever we are crossing the law junctions, we are putting ourselves at risk of being out of our positions as authorities. And you see this only in first month we appear with 190,000. After 3 months we had 250, which is significant number. It's almost 60,000 of kids, because mostly of those people were women with kids. What it means? It means that as Mission Impossible, we have to take over, and we feel responsible to survive. Normally, we would say even with 25,000, it would be very, very demanding in terms of finance, in terms of preparation of our investment. Because only education system, only investment in one school takes at least 2 to 3 years and takes a lot of money. And now you have another 10 or maybe 15 schools to prepare in just a couple of months. Is it possible? No, it's not. But we are trying to put all those people at our homes, and also those kids at our present schools, and also to create, because of our successful story, to create for those people job positions. And so far, so good. Unfortunately, winter is coming, so we are going to have different challenges probably in next couple of weeks. But what I'm trying to say, as I started, we try to change our approach and mindset. So we come with the idea how to make it happen through and with some international experts and local experts. So we call our friends from different municipalities that are suffering from the same problems, and they are trying to face, although maybe similar position, not in the same scale and scope, but it is similar. So we prepare white book, and it leads us to some kind of completely different approach, because from 650 we become thinking of a city of 1 million inhabitants as a realistic strategy for present, because at present we are almost 1 million city, but mostly for future. We all know that in next decades we are going to face all those challenges according to climate change, according to maybe water and food shortages, and people from Asia and Africa looking for this. As Wrocław and Central Europe, we feel ourselves as first line in this position. So it is, we have to be prepared anyway. So we just accelerate this process together with our neighborhood municipalities. But we try to put it in numbers, because we are talking about finance, and we calculate that in order to face it properly, to welcome all those new inhabitants, to prepare this sustainable and let's say fair communal services to all of present and future inhabitants. For newcomers, we need $10 billion. We don't have that money. It means that, and probably we'll never have this in one hand or one pocket. So we try just to think what is essential for us to be put in first stage? It is essential to have only 10% as an initial investment, just to provide some dignity for those newcomers, but also to integrate them in the right sense, in a right and fair conditions for all inhabitants, not to put advantage or disadvantage to any of those stakeholders who are creating this metropolitan region. So it is about cooperation at the local stage and putting private and public finances. Public means European, state governmental, regional, and municipal finances in right place, right momentum. But it also means that we need to be prepared. We need to change present strategies and policies that we prepared very freshly, sometimes a couple of years ago, sometimes a couple of months ago. But we believe this is the momentum that we are preparing ourselves to becoming resilient in a very solid fundamental sense, to becoming resilient for 2050 with all values and the meaningful words of this project. So it is about strategy. It is about our policies. It is about prediction. What is going to happen in next several months, in next several years, but also in next decade. So it put us also in many programs, strategies, and associations which are crucial for us. METREX is natural because from our perspective, this is the best solution we can provide, not only to our regional inhabitants and people, but also for countries, but also for Europe from this perspective. But moreover, we believe that this is also the solution for many continents, for other continents, because it creates this balance and this, let's say, successful equality between rural and urban values. But it brings also need of many funding systems and solutions. And together with the European Investment Bank, with the World Bank, with the European Commission, with lots of private funds, we are trying to put the right moment for right instrument. And very proud that every stakeholder, especially those big players, they are understanding this position, that it is high time for us to be more flexible, to adapt to expectations of municipalities, to look in a wider position from metropolitan point of view, because this is the one and only solution that can deliver successful story, or maybe adaptation to those demanding changes that we are facing nowadays. And from that perspective, I want my city, I want my region to remain with this successful track. And together with Hank, with Sandeep, but with many other colleagues from European, over 50 metropolitan cities and regions, we are looking for the best solution, and we are trying to share this with our friends from other continents. It is a great privilege to have this opportunity to share not only story of Wrocław and maybe this demanding, as you see, problems from this year, but also this hope that I believe it's very visible in my words, because as I can only repeat, we are METREX, and we believe that we can have impact and we can change our regions and municipalities and countries only for better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacob. That was really a very inspiring talk, and by the way, also a very inspiring image. And even behind Jacob, I can see the word hope. and it's hope and it's hard work that we all are facing. So thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to Massimo Alloli. Jacob, if you can stop sharing, then Massimo can come in. Massimo is from the ANCI, the Association of Local Communities in Italy. So ANCI, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Hank. Thank you for the invitation in this session. And I'm, as you said, I am from the National Association of Italian Municipalities. So in Italy, as maybe you know, we have 8,000 more or less municipalities. This means that we have a big work to be done in representing all of them in all the decisions who are taken by our national government, by our national parliaments, and we also represent cities in negotiations with regions, who are one of the main institutional actors in Italy. I will use the few time I have at my disposal just to give you an overview of what's happening at the moment in Italian cities and towns and metropolitan cities, which are one of the institutional arrangements we have in Italy to govern metropolitan areas. Before my intervention, I listened to the description made by Jacob Mazur about what's happening in Poland, and it's really impressive. And I think that there are many challenges who are in common between our cities. Of course, the situation depends also from some geographical determinants, but I listened about challenges such as the issue of refugees, the issue of climate change, the issue of financial shortage, and I think that there is a very common situation in European cities. On the other hand, I will speak about some opportunities that cities have in Europe at this moment, because I will try to share my some slides for presentation. We are in a situation within which we have at the moment a very broad amount of tools who are thought in order to help cities and urban governments in order to recovery from the many challenges that they have faced in the last years. Of course, all of you know the Next Generation EU initiative that was enacted as a response from the European Commission to the impact of the pandemic outbreak in cities. But we also have other instruments, other tools for cities, such as a new programming period of cohesion policy. We have made our research office has made an estimate of how of the amount of the public investment that Italian cities will have at disposal in the next 7 years, and the result is pretty impressive, because we have now to manage for sure what we can define as an unprecedented amount of investments. We have calculated that the total amount is more or less 76 billion euros if we consider the money we still are spending from the previous programming period of the cohesion policy, the national investments for cities, the new cohesion policy that we consider will allow cities to spend more or less 11 billion euros, and the so-called PNRR, which is very famous in Italy. It's the National Plan for Recovery and Resilience. This is the plan that was created for giving response to the pandemic outbreak. And we have, according to our estimate, cities will have at their disposal more or less 40 billion euros to be spent by 2026. As you can see here, our Next Generation EU plan is a very big plan. I think it's the most significant plan among European countries. We have a total amount of 235 billion euros. As I told you, according to our estimate, 40 billion will go to cities and local governments. So we have very strict targets and milestones to respect to get those money from the European Union. And for the first time, we don't have the traditional tools for accountability with the European Union to get the money back. They don't want to see our proof of payment. They want to see the results of our policies. So we have, just to make some examples of the targets we have to respect as Italian cities. We need to have, for example, 6,400 Italian cities that will adopt a digital platform for tax payments, or we have to carry out the restoration of 250 little towns. We have to plant new 6 million trees by 2026 in Italian cities, in 14 metropolitan Italian cities, which is a very challenging target. We are going to buy 3,000 new buses and to build 200 new kilometers of cycling paths. We have to work on the restoration of 400,000 square meters of schools. We have to work on the urban regeneration of 1 million square meters of cities. These are all the targets, and the European Commission wants to see those targets fulfilled. That's what we are going to do with the National Plan for Recovery and Resilience. We also are now starting with the new programming period of the cohesion policy. We have 75 billion euros according to the partnership agreement between our government and the European Commission. Traditionally, we know that the cohesion policy is a policy which is managed by regional government. However, an important amount of money in Italy will be managed directly from cities. We are I think the only country in Italy where the national government has established a national operating program for cities. So those money will not go through regions and then to cities. They will go straight from national government to cities, and this is the so-called PM Metro Plus. It's the national operating program for metropolitan cities. We also have a strategy for inner areas. So those are investments for little towns in the mountains. And we also have programs for middle-sized cities, but they will be mainly managed by regional governments. Here you can see that we have, for the national program for metropolitan cities in Italy, next year, in the next 7 years, 3 billion euros. So I will just run to say, of course, this is a unique opportunities for cities to have this big amount of investments, but on the other side, it's also a big challenge for us, because as you know, it's true for all European countries, our local administrations their administrative capability is undermined by 10 years of crisis, of austerity, of cuts to budgets. We lost the 20% of our personnel, so 100,000 people who were working in metropolitan in cities, in governments in Italy, has retired and they have not been replaced. So we are now challenging. We have now this challenge to carry on all this program, the Next Generation EU and the new cohesion policy with few personnel. We also have inflation. When you make public investment, you buy materials, you buy works, but the price is rising, of course. We have inflation, and so we are now negotiating with the national government solutions for also increasing the investments so that they will allow to respect the targets. And timing is very few. 2026 is a deadline which is very near for cities. So we essentially...
Massimo, I need to speed you up a bit because we have only 17 minutes left, so in total.
Okay, so I'm just finishing saying that we are trying with many projects, ANCI supporting municipalities in fulfilling the targets and realizing all the investments. Of course, I think that METREX and all the European networks who are working with cities can be very helpful in helping cities to face all those challenges. Thank you.
Well, sorry, you were already there. Thank you very much, Massimo. And indeed, and of course, we are here to support everyone who needs help. That's what we are for. And we can share also links to the organizations that are here to also get in direct contact with each other. I would like to give the floor to Sandeep Shingadia from Greater Birmingham, the West Midlands Combined Authority, and in particular the Transport for West Midlands. Sandeep, please take the floor.
Thank you, Henk, and good afternoon, everyone. Great to be speaking at the Urban Economy Forum, and it's been really interesting to see and hear all the excellent combinations of conversations that have actually been taking place. So hopefully you can see my screen. Please give me a thumbs up if you can.
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. So just by way of quick background, I am Director of Strategic Partnerships and Delivery Integration at Transport for West Midlands and look after a number of major transport programs which are transforming transport across the West Midlands and really providing a greater choice of movement for businesses, people, residents and our communities to make sure they can work within some of the big challenges that we are currently facing. Now, what I wanted to touch on very briefly are some of those big strategic challenges that we currently have, and I like to use pictures, so let's see if you can figure out what all of these mean. So there are a number of catalysts, and we have heard a lot today about COVID and the impact that has had. We've heard a lot about Brexit, and for the UK, we are still dealing with the fallout from Brexit and the impact that has had. We have spoken a lot, and we've heard about Russia and Ukraine, and particularly from Jakub's perspective, the impact that has had on places like Poland and in particular Wrocław. We've seen the tightening of fiscal policies across the UK, largely from the Bank of England, and we've seen a number of senior changes at a senior government level, and those of you who follow politics in the UK will be well aware of that. We also have a climate crisis which is ongoing, and we've heard this afternoon the importance of net zero and how we can actually work towards that, and that's something again that we are actively pursuing. We have a plan, West Midlands 2041, which is our plan to get us to net zero in the next sort of 15, 17 years. That will not be easy, and there will be some difficult choices that need to be made. There are a number of impacts, and there is potential for more volatility and disruption, high volume of people testing positive for COVID-19, and even though it's not making headlines anymore, it is still an ongoing issue that we are having to deal with. The West Midlands itself is projected to be one of the slowest regional economies to recover from the COVID pandemic, and it was hit very hard over the past couple of years. We've seen lots of changes during that time. We've seen fewer people using public transport and commuting, and that in itself can destabilize the public transport network, particularly where private operators need to make a return and a commercial return on people using it through fares. Again, a common theme, we've seen a cost of living crisis, we've seen rising inflation, we've seen rising fuel prices and energy prices, but a falling in real terms of wages, which impact some of our most deprived communities the most. We've seen supply chain issues, so just the availability of talent, materials, labor shortages, and the rapidly increasing energy prices, and the knock-on impact that has, not just for the day-to-day operations of the transport system, but also impacting on the delivery of new transport projects and programs. Increase in the cost of debt. We've seen low national unemployment and staff retention, and we have ongoing challenges in terms of constrained government resources and the pressures that that brings on local governments. Now, there is lots of changes that are still happening, and they will probably see some opportunities as well. So all of this isn't always a gloomy picture. There are always, where there are catalysts and impacts, there are always opportunities. Now, some of the big areas that we are discussing with government is around additional devolution, particularly around transport and the levelling up agenda across the UK. It's also from a perspective that the combined authority is a trusted delivery partner. We have been able to deliver a lot of projects in a short space of time, and being able to have that voice with central government is a great opportunity for us. There are also areas around the mayor and some of the additional funding that the mayor can bring in through a precept, but also through the transport levy on some of our local authorities. But before I get on to how do we actually deal with this in a sustainable way, I just wanted to touch on the investment that is taking place in our transport system. And as I've already touched on, the pandemic has had a damaging impact on our transport system, and it's the first time that we've ever had to discourage public transport use. We need to build on the positive impact on increased active travel uptake and encourage people back onto public transport. And as part of that, there are a number of projects and programs that we are currently investing significant sums of money in. So building new railway stations, and we're building new railway stations, the first in over a generation, something that hasn't been done for 50, 60 years here in the West Midlands, building 7 new railway stations. We're expanding the metro system across the metropolitan region. We are building bus-based rapid transit. Again, these are new innovative transport solutions that have not been done before. And we are also investing in the workhorse of our public transport system, which is the bus network, and making sure that we have a bus strategy which continues to provide opportunities to improve bus services through a bus service improvement plan. And then also around cycle hire and making sure that we have a truly integrated transport system. So we have rolled out nearly 2,000 bikes now across the West Midlands as one coherent cycle hire scheme. But I suppose the real crux of the issue comes down to, that's all very well and good, but how do we continue to fund all of this transport investment in a sustainable way? And this isn't always about going back to government and saying, give us some more money to deliver this. We need to make sure that we have fiscal devolution, but we also need to get that balance right. If we get the balance right, this is about trying to balance off the local powers that we have within the West Midlands versus the central government powers that it has around funding and finance. And where do we get that balance right? But ultimately, we need more of that fiscal devolution to allow us to continue to invest in our transport systems for the future. Now, some of the things that we are already doing are looking at income streams within some of the powers that we already have as a combined authority. So these are things like introducing a mayoral precept onto some of the council tax bands. That in itself can generate a significant amount of money. Now, all of these things that I will talk about have the potential to raise billions. How easy they are to do is more difficult, a difficult balance that we need to get right. There are things like business rate growth retention schemes. Again, we can do some of that now, but it is about getting that balance right in terms of what we can do locally. Now, there are also a whole new range of income streams which we can consider, but they require additional powers, particularly from central government. So things like infrastructure levies, pavement parking enforcement, and business rate supplements. And again, all of those need further interventions from central government to make sure we can actually implement those in the future. It's also then thinking about some of the share of existing central government taxation. So income tax, value-added tax, and vehicle excise duty, all of those taxes go straight to central government. How do we actually cut and retain a share of some of that local taxation locally to make sure that we can actually use it to fund some of the big things that we need to do? And then it's also a share of some of the proposed new taxation, so online sales taxes and infrastructure levies. Now, all of these things really allow us to capitalize on some of the commercial income, but also think about some of our asset bases and how do we actually make sure we can lever the right value out of these in the future to make sure that we have income streams that can continue to fund what are very ambitious programs around transport. Now, one of the things that many of you will always hear me say is we don't do transport for transport's sake. Transport is there to underpin all of our wider social, economic, environmental, and other impacts that we want to see happen across the wider metropolitan region. And transport underpins a lot of those key areas. So investing in that will always be a big priority area for us. I'll leave it at that. Happy to open up the conversation a bit later on.
Thank you very much, Sandeep. That was clear as ever. Thank you very much for that. As time is running, I would like to invite now Jerry Muscat from the European Investment Bank. Jerry, if you can please take the floor and I will share your presentation.
Thanks very much, Hank, and to the other speakers as well. For the European Investment Bank, investing in cities is a real priority. Over the last 5 years, we've financed around 96 billion of investment in urban development, and that represents around 30% of all the financing that we do. So that gives an idea of the high importance of that. If you could move to the next slide, please, Hank. We run a municipality survey regularly every year or every 2 years to give us an idea of what really the challenges of which are facing cities in the investment context. Many of these we've heard from colleagues today or speaking earlier about the difficulty of huge increases in energy bills, the needs for supporting refugee integration, the fact that budgets are still recovering from COVID, and the huge cost increases that we see due to the supplier and supply chain issues. And I think that it's telling that despite all that, cities are still showing their interest in sustainable finance, and where we saw over 370 applications for the EU 100 Cities Climate Mission, which shows that sustainability is high on the agenda despite all these competing concerns, or perhaps it shows that sustainability is a way of actually addressing some of those challenges in themselves as well through improved energy efficiency and other measures. You could turn to the next slide, please, Hank, just to give an idea of the size of the investment needs on the financing side. I think it's the one before that, in fact, but okay. Yeah, no, sorry, next slide. I just want to give an idea of the EU funding available for cities and talk a little bit about the landscape. We had a very nice illustration of that for Italy, and the funding is actually quite large, which is available. And as Massimo indicated, for Italy, something like 8% of all of the ERDF funding is allocated to integrated territorial development now, which is the highest percentage ever. And that's, if I'm calculating right, about 16 billion euros. But besides that, there's huge amounts of funding from the Resilience and Recovery Fund, and also the 2021 to 27 cohesion funds. And then within these, there are various elements which are also oriented which can be oriented to financing cities. The InvestEU, which can leverage through providing guarantees, it can leverage financial instruments and debt, and the Just Transition Fund. And there are new initiatives which also have a big role for cities, the European Urban Initiative, and the 100 climate neutral and smart cities mission, which I mentioned, the adaptation mission, which is very important for cities. Many cities are joining the climate adaptation mission, and the new European Bauhaus, which brings alongside sustainability and inclusion, brings aesthetics into the mix, which I think is a very interesting development. Next slide, please, Hank. Just to reflect a little on the scale of the investment needs, one estimate which was made in the run-up to the cities mission was that for a typical city of 100,000 people in the EU, the investment needs are roughly $1 billion to achieve climate neutrality by 2030. It's enormous, clearly, and a huge challenge, particularly in urban mobility, in buildings, in heating and electricity. And this means not only the city itself, of course, but also the private sector and the individuals in terms of their housing have to be a part of that financing as well. Could move to the next slide, please. Now, for the EIB, we are a bank, we are not a grant provider, but we can very often co-finance with EU funding, or we can lend to cities in their own right, either just purely alongside the city's own funds or together with other banks. And in terms of our financing approach, we can finance direct projects, investment loans to finance big projects, which are typically above 100 million euros. It could be a metro project, could be an urban regeneration, for example. And we can also finance investment funds, which we've done very successfully in brownfield funds, urban regeneration funds. And then particularly important for the sustainable finance are what we call framework loans, where we can finance a slice of a city's long-term investment program over 3 to 4 years. And there we can finance multi-sector investments, which are not necessarily all identified at the time when we sign the loan, but we can identify the sectors and then put criteria to disperse against the projects. And this is very useful for climate finance, given that it touches so many areas of a city's budget. Next slide, please. To give a few examples, in Bologna, we've recently signed a climate action and urban regeneration framework with the city, which supports the city's long-term investment program, a little as in line with what I just mentioned as a framework loan. We've also financed a project in France looking at the just transition of a coal region to improve energy efficiency in social housing and also tackle energy poverty, as well as focusing on cultural heritage. Next slide, please. And besides direct financing to cities like that, we can also invest via intermediaries, particularly municipal banks and national promotional banks, which are active in the financing of municipalities. And we have programs like the ones there shown in the slide in Belgium, in Germany, in Poland, and in Greece. Next slide, please, because I'm conscious of time. Besides the financing, we also provide advisory support, and this is very much oriented to unlocking investments and tackling barriers and preparing projects. So we have JASPERS, which supports particularly the preparation of projects for EU co-financing. We have a range of other instruments like ELENA, which targets energy efficiency investment. And we have other new investments, new facilities which are looking at the circular economy, the C3 CETAF facility for circular cities, the ADAPT facility, which supports climate adaptation investment, and a new facility called Embrace, which is targeting particularly investments addressing refugee integration. Next slide, please. So just to give a couple of examples, we've supported the city of Leipzig in developing prioritizing its investments under its energy plan for 2050. Next slide, please. We've also looked at in the context of the JASPERS program, we've provided finance we've provided advice to the city of Gdańsk and many other cities in Poland in particular, where we've supported preparation of particular investments that are EU co-financed in sectors like urban transport, in culture, water and wastewater, and so on, over many years. Next slide, please. So I'd just like to finish with that and say that I think that I'm very glad to be part of this event in Toronto, and thank you very much. Over back to you, Hank.
Thank you very much, Jerry, and thank you for your very clear words. We are indeed short in time. That's more or less always the case. But I hope that's almost also a question to Ozan here from the organization, that we also will receive a recording, because it is recorded, and I think it was a very good session. So thank you all for let's say your contributions. It is clear that there are many challenges that we all face, but it's also good to see that there are quite some instruments already in place. And although let's say we need to be sharp on let's say keeping these instruments up to date and also making them work, I think it's indeed also good to understand that we should use those instruments and indeed exchange on them as much as possible. And I think also the ANSI example is very good to learn from. We already had a presentation on that in the Turing conference in June, sorry, at METREX. But I think this is also for METREX itself a fantastic opportunity to gather all these ideas and also knowledge and experience on financing urban development. And I think for me, it's the message is also to take it further than this, and to also organize maybe some additional meetings for the network, but of course also everyone who would like to join. So thank you very much for this. I'm sorry that we need to move on. Maybe Jakub, is Jakub still here? Yes, maybe you would like to have a final word, Jakub. Thank you from my side. Thank you very much for this, and we will come back to you later on.
Thank you, Hank. It is always great privilege, but also great joy to be among such amazing people and have this discussion. I'm really impressed by the numbers from Italy, but also I'm always very keen on cooperating with financial institutions as European Investment Bank is. I must say that we have a lot of challenges, but I believe that because of experiences we are sharing together here, not only in Europe, but also with our friends from all over the world, we are about to become successful in our challenges. We believe it, and we are the right person to provide that kind of success we believe in. So guys, fingers crossed, let's do the right job, and let's discuss and meet and have this conversation as often as is possible. Thank you, Urban. Thank you for this forum. We had again another opportunity. Tomorrow, as METREX, we will discuss some other issues in Amsterdam. So all of those who are interested in European perspective are very welcome to just watch us or join us virtually, or share with us the vision